And welcome back to Motor City Metrics here. We are pleased to be joined by a veteran Detroit News scribe, Chris McCosky. And thanks for joining us, Chris, after the Detroit uh, kind of anticlimactic appearance there at the winter meetings. But before we get into all that, we like to ask our first-time guests if they would mind sharing with us their earliest baseball memory.
Okay, you're going to use this against me like as an old age joke, right? Because I'm going to go
No,
back
no.
a few years farther than you guys. I don't. The first one I remember. I saw Nolan Ryan pitch a no-hitter at Tiger Stadium against the Tigers. I think that was '74. But my first memories go back to '67. The last day of the season, they had to win a doubleheader against California, right? Or in a tie with Boston to get into the playoffs. And they won the first game. They were down by 2. They had 2 on the ninth. In the second game, and Dick McAuliffe, who hadn't hit into a double play all year, hit into a double play to end the season. So, yeah, my first baseball memory was tears. Tears after they lost the final game of the season.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not exactly young over here. The first person I ever asked this to for our podcast was Lynn Henning, your colleague at the News,
Oh,
and
okay.
his first baseball memory was going to see Mickey
Ty
Mantle
Cobb.
and Al Kaline play. But both Mantle and Kaline hit a home run in his first game, he said. So
Nice.
yeah,
Well done.
You're not the oldest by any means.
Well, it's good to know that.
Nobody built, and by the way, nobody built more off the 1967 season than Hawk Harrelson, because that was his best season when he came over to Boston to help him win the division with Carl Yastrzemski. He had a song off that too. I watched a documentary. Yeah, he had a song. He did a song. Hawk Harrelson did a song. I forgot what it was. He did some sort of country music song. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. Don't look it up. Just watch his I don't know if it's a 30 for 30 or whatever they did on Hawk. That's pretty good. That guy lived a life, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of country music, the winter meetings were down in Nashville.
Yeah, were they? I know I was in Opryland Resort. I didn't get anywhere near Nashville. This place is way out. It's out in the boonies, and it's a biodome. Everything's enclosed, and it's massive, and if you get lost. So I just felt like we were in a separate community unto ourselves there. It was pretty weird. And as you mentioned at the top, man, it was, from the Tigers' point of view, uneventful, except for the fact that AJ we finally found out what we kind of already knew, that he got extended, and Jim Leland stole the show. So it wasn't a waste by any means.
No, and Jim Leland is definitely deserved among some of the names too. They mentioned too. I think Luis Gaston was on the list too, and Leland for what he did in Detroit, but more importantly too, getting Pittsburgh back on the map after a successful run the Pirates had in the '70s, and then put him back on there. And the Pirates haven't been the same since. So that's how impactful he's a manager. But as far as speaking of impactful too, one of the things that I took away from the winter meetings was that, I don't know if it's just remembering it differently, but the lack of activity, and it goes across the board too. But what was your takeaway with let me just talk about the I know you're focused on the Tigers, but the Juan Soto sweepstakes, the fact that this is the third time and he's not even arbitration eligible, that he's going to be traded. Now he's going to New York. It just seems like that whole thing, the way it went down. I just feel like Soto, this should have been a fit a long time ago or some point. Or it's just, it's a little weird.
I get what you're saying, and I agree with that. I feel like there might be a red flag involved with him somehow. I don't know him. I've not been in a clubhouse with him. I think part of the problem is less Soto and more San Diego, though. I mean, they went out and just got expensive pieces and didn't really have a clue how to put them all together. And then now they're trying to get something back and kind of retool that way. I think if the New York Yankees in that ballpark isn't the perfect fit for Juan Soto with that lineup, batting either ahead of or behind Judge, however they want to do it, then there's never going to be a good fit for him, because I feel like that's a monster waiting to happen right there. Putting him in that ballpark, in that lineup, oh man, and that's home for him, so there's going to be some comfort there. I think that's a dangerous team. I don't think that puts the Yankees like they're the favorites to win next year by any stretch, but man, oh man, they're a lot better. They weren't that fun to pitch to and play against without Soto, and having him in that lineup, pretty powerful.
Yeah, with him, I think it was reported a few years back that the Nationals offered him was a 15-year deal for like $450 million, but it involved deferments. The Nationals like to do those deferments
Yeah,
until he's like 60 or whatever, and he turned it down.
Bobby Bonilla
And
contract.
it feels like it's always felt like he's a guy who just wants to get to free agency. There are not a lot of guys like that anymore. It seems like a lot of guys are signing these big long deals before they get to free agency,
Yeah.
but I guess the Yankees, they don't particularly care, right? They're willing to retool every single year if they have to. They've got the money and the
Yeah,
resources.
and
But
they can afford it. I mean,
yeah,
they're in a perfect spot to afford it, and they actually have pared their payroll right in the last couple of years. It's not like it used to be where they were luxury
yeah,
tax all the time. They're not like the Dodgers who just cut the check, don't care,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, they're
But
small market compared to the Mets.
right, well, none of those New Yorkers would like to hear that. I promise you.
Mhm.
Speaking of payroll too, you were there at the end of the year presser when Harris was talking about how they were going to spend. He got kind of somewhat defensive a little bit. At least I think so. But he was talking about making complementary pieces, and so far we've seen that with the two signings. But as far as a trade market goes, we the young players we're looking at right now. You're looking at Jace Young, and he mentioned that he hasn't played in AAA yet, and AAA
Yeah,
is going to
he's not
be
going to. Yeah, he's not in the
yeah.
same category as Malloy and Keith.
Exactly. And I think fans are seemingly kind of confused or frustrated with this. But my question to you is, Chris, you look at the Cole Key situation, he is going to be heading into camp with a chance to win the everyday second base job, do you think? Or is because even with Malloy, too, it was kind of confusion that I remember Harris saying this, oh, he's going to play the outfield more. But then the last month of the season or so in Toledo, he was playing third base.
You've watched enough this team, and you've watched AJ manage enough to know that you're going to have to play multiple positions. I don't think there's anybody besides Torque, Rogers, maybe Parker Meadows is a center fielder only. But there are not too many every day. Javi, obviously, it's shortstop. There's the rest of those guys are going to move. He's going to mix and match. They're going to use the DH spot to mix and match. I bet Malloy, if he makes the team, is going to be a DH a lot. And I think that they are pretty sold on him as an outfielder first and a infielder if they have to. I don't think they love his third base play. I know they don't love his third base play. So he's going to have to hit a ton, and he's going to have to man one of the corners. Before Kerry Carpenter came up, they were talking about like he might be a liability in right field. He's not a liability. He's not a Gold Glover by any stretch, but he's far from a liability. So you got to give these guys a chance, And as far as him being defensive, I don't think that was. I think he wants to make the distinction between not having the resources and using the resources intelligently. They don't want to. They're not just going to go buy players. And if you look at the market, who do you want them to buy? Do you want them to buy Matt Chapman and then keep Colt Keith in the minor leagues? I mean, you got. I mean, they weren't going to get in on Soto because they're not going to trade all these dudes that they've been grooming for the last 2 years and losing year after year to get these guys. They're not going to trade them for Juan Soto, who may or may not be, poison in a clubhouse for all we know. So, I mean, I think they're being smart. I know patience is thin. I've been watching this team all these years. I know we would love to see some. I think they can compete for the weak Central Division title this year. I think they can be in the hunt for a long time. And I think there's some really good players coming. And Harris has been steadfast from day one, not taking the bats away from guys. We're not going to bring some bridge guy in there and keep bats away from guys who could be the future. So I don't think that's nuts. I think that's smart. I think it's hard to be patient, but this is only Harris's second year. So, if you keep changing it, you're going to have to kind of reset the clock a little bit. I like where they are. I'm not going to lie. I think the next year's going to be fun. I think Canna is a really good pickup. I think Canna is a smart pickup. He's going to get on base a lot. He's going to knock in runs. He's going to show these dudes what a good professional at bat looks like. So, and I like what he's done with the coaching staff. I think Joey Cora is going to be huge. I think he's going to be huge for Javi. So there's a lot of things that I'm excited about, and camp is going to be nuts. I hope you guys can come down because there's battles. There's legit battles, and I think they want Cole Keith to win a job. I think they want Malloy to win a job, but they're not going to hand it to him.
So that was what I was going to ask you. It's one of the we saw some interviews with Harris and with Greenberg, and they did. One of the quotes that came out of that was that they're not going to hand these guys jobs, which is
Right.
that's what they have to say, right? But to your
That's
point,
what it's got to
there's
be. That's what it's not just.
yeah,
It's not just lip service, man. I mean, you just don't hand a dude that's played. Like how many at bats did Colt even have? Did he even have a half a year in AAA? I don't even know. You guys have no
Yeah,
better than me.
he came up in
100
late.
bats.
Yeah, over 100 bats
no,
in Toledo. Yeah.
he played about 55, 65 games up there. He had
So
13
you
home
don't hand
runs.
a dude a job like that. They didn't hand carry a
No,
job,
no, I
So and
think
Court had to go back to the minor leagues after halfway through his first year. So I
yeah,
think
I
that's a
think
smart way to do it.
more what I was getting at, I think, is the idea that they say that, but I don't think they're, like, as you said, I don't think they're going to go out and force, because the free agents aren't really there to go and get, like, we're going to go get a veteran second baseman and force them to beat them. Like, I don't see that happening
No,
necessarily,
that's
but
not happening.
they're kind of walking the fence there, and so I've just had
Well,
this general sense that they're not really, they may not add another bat this year, but I do feel like they may target another pitcher or two, and I'm curious if you
right.
got that feeling from being down there.
No, 100%. He said it. He said it. He said we might be done with bats. They're still going to look for a veteran catcher who can kind of toggle and be an insurance policy at AAA and help Dingler get ready. But you got to remember, there's other guys here. It's not like they're not going to go get Whit Merrifield when Andy Ibanez will probably start at second base. You know what I mean? And Vierling's going to start at third and play a lot of third base. McKinstry, who is out of options, is going to have a chance to kind of be that 26-man outfield infield guy and be like the regular super utility guy. They've not given up on Kreidler. They've not given up on Maton. So there's guys there. So there's no earthly need to get, unless it's a guy who they see is a young upgrade on the guys that are there right now and who could be in that mix better than Ibanez, better than McKinstry, better than Nevin, whoever you want to say that's in that big cluster of guys. It's the only way I think that they're going to get another bat here. They're like, I looked up and down. Unless you're going to pay big money and block a guy, I don't see anybody that's intriguing to me.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of too is for a team like Baltimore, for example, that have a couple prospects, say like Joey Ortiz, who's been hitting pretty well, but again, Baltimore doesn't seem like they're the type of team that's willingly going to trade their prospect capital. I mean, we saw that a little bit last year or this year in the trade deadline, but I think that if you look at somebody like Sawyer Gibson-Long and even to a certain extent Reese Olson, my only concern is I think the Tigers are going to be more aggressive with pitching, but it seems like now for the first time, and I'm saying this sincerely, it's the first time in a long time, Chris, that you look at the Tigers' depth in the minor league pitching wise, like coming into this year, like Chris and I, we didn't think anything of Sawyer Gibson-Long. I'll be honest, we were just like, oh, this is the guy they got, and suddenly when we were hearing from the coaching staff that they're like, hey, throw a changeup, no problem, and he's willing to do all these things, and suddenly he's a weapon. His K per 9 jumps up 2 from 8 to like almost over 10. That to me also, I think they can draw, if they wanted to trade, they actually, for the first time, draw the position of strength, which is how they're developing pitching.
That you just mentioned is the biggest strength that they have going, and that's their development team now and the tools that are in place. I mean, you can look at the jump in spin rate for Olson. These dudes, I mean, they're learning stuff down there. They're teaching them stuff and they're becoming better. Cautionary word, I guess. Sawyer was great in September. Joey Wentz was great in September. I mean, September is not the best month to evaluate guys. It just isn't. And we've seen it over and over. I think Sawyer's got really good stuff. He's got a really good head on his shoulders. He works. He's maniacal about stuff. You know what I mean? He's like real studious, real analytics conscious, and does everything right. And his stuff will play. But again, we need to see more. Like I'm not sure he gets a rotation spot to start the season, right? Unless Casey's going to be limited, so there's going to be a lot of things we need to figure out. I mean, is Reese going to be the same? Reese was, like you talked about Sawyer. Reese came out of nowhere. I mean, in spring training, he wasn't even competing. You know what I mean? So it was like, okay, it's spring training, first month in Toledo, he's getting rocked, and then he's got like a 3,500 spin rate on his stuff. Like, what's happened? What just happened? So that's the exciting stuff, and that's what development is. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Like, when you think, I mean, we're still a couple months away from this, right? There's still a lot to be shaken out. But you mentioned some of the guys who are on options, and I believe Joey Wentz is one of those guys. and
Correct.
they've lost Tyler Alexander, so they no longer have the bulk reliever lefty. So it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see if they try to bring somebody else for that, or they try to
Well,
group
they
him for
will.
that role.
We talked to Scott. One of our times with Scott, we talked about, well, do you need a left-handed starter? Because Tarek is the only left-handed starter. He's like, nah, I'm not worried about that, but a left-handed reliever would be nice. It's not like a need, but it's a want. So I think there will be another lefty coming, maybe another righty too. They're not done adding pitching, and I think there's going to be a Michael Lorenzen type signing still coming for the rotation. Could even be Michael Lorenzen. You know what I mean? They're going to let that kind of sift down and see who's left there. But yeah, they're not going to stop bringing in pitching. They're not going to stop bringing in waiver dudes either. You'll see, he'll take a flyer on some guy thinking he's one notch above what they got. So there's going to be a lot of movement, but not the movement that everybody's clamoring for. It's not going to be Matt Chapman. It's not going to be whoever else you want to say, Kevin Kiermaier, or whoever else is out there that you think is a big name, or our fans think is a big name. It would be a sexy ad. That's not what they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think, for example, I saw earlier today that Kansas City is interested in Seth Lugo, and
here's the thing.
That's not
That's
bad.
a good guy. That's a good guy, but I think he wants multi-years. They're not going to give him multi-years.
Well, so one of the things that we had heard,
doubling his money, man.
well, we could talk to you about that, because we had a podcast last night, and the narrative got out there that Erod didn't want to pitch on the West Coast, and I went back and looked, and you wrote an article about it. All the beat guys wrote an article. He actually talked to the press in Pittsburgh, I think it was, and said, no, it was never about the West Coast. It was never about the Dodgers, but fans just decided he didn't want to go to the West Coast.
It's unbelievable. People don't want. I get it. They'll see the Twitter. I'll post a story, or Evan or whoever will post a story, and there'll be a headline on the story. They won't call up the story because it's behind a paywall. So they just go off this little sentence and just say, "Oh my God, he doesn't want to play out west. Oh, he hates the Tigers. He screwed the Tigers." No, he did not. And then I get emails saying, or text saying, "Oh man, Harris is so weak. He just bowed down to that. Harris screwed that all up." No, Harris didn't give him the opt out or the no trade clause. Harris did. There was not. Trust me on this. The attention. Nobody wanted him. Like nobody wanted Erod at the deadline. The Dodgers were by far. They're not only one of the few people going after him. They gave him by far the best offer. And if I'm Eduardo, okay, you fought for the right to have these things in your contract. You just have gotten your marriage and your home life back together, kind of, and his wife loved it in Birmingham. She truly did. They didn't move after the season. They stayed there. They stayed there probably up until right now when he signed with Phoenix. So all of that is like nothing against the Tigers. Why would he take up and leave the Dodgers? If the Dodgers would have given him that extra year, he would have gone for a month. But for nothing else on his contract, uproot his family again, even if it's just for a month. No, I just got this to where everybody's happy. So he stays in Detroit, he plays his card, and he doubles his money. How can anybody be mad at him? Or what were the Tigers supposed to do? You want to keep pounding the nail on Al Avila, go ahead. But that was the deal that he had to make to sign him, and this is the outcome. So I'm not mad at anybody for that, especially not Eduardo.
Yeah.
I mean, he legitimately liked it. But he likes money more. He likes security more. How do
everybody would?
That? I can't.
I mean, he's going in a situation too where the Diamondbacks, Chris mentioned this yesterday, in the postseason, they had 4 or 5 straight bullpen starts. A lot of their starts were bullpen starts, and he needed a pitcher so he can come in. And also, I learned yesterday that no one knows that Arizona's in the Southwest. It's not on the West Coast. I mean, I was getting so mad about that. I was sitting there going, does it even basic geography? When you think of coast, it's on a coast body of water. Chris, I know we're old. I understand that, but come on. Phoenix is not.
I get it. I used to see when I go through my timeline. I used to snipe back, but that just takes up so much energy. I can't do it anymore. So now I either mute, block, or ignore. It's my go-to: mute, block, and ignore in that order.
Well, and the other kind of, everything seemed to happen late night on Wednesday. And right
Yeah.
around the same time as the Soto trade and Erod signing was Jeimer Candelario signing, which I think it's. I mean, I don't think any Tigers fans have any animosity towards him, but it is kind of fun to think, especially for him, that he was a guy who got non-tendered 2 years ago, and here he is
Right.
getting life-changing money a couple years later. So that was kind of
Yeah.
cool. It was an unexpected signing, though. I'll say that.
Real happy for him, man. He worked his butt off. You can't redo history. When the Tigers no tendered him, there was no clamor about that. There was nobody pounding the table and say, "Oh my God, how are they going to do this?" Because he really struggled. He really struggled of the 2 years leading up to that, or year and a half leading up to that. And he got to Washington. He started to figure some things out. Went to the Cubs and raked, and he earned himself this deal. So that's a beautiful thing. I really like him as a person. I know how hard he works. I mean, he really does, and it's a hard game. And nothing has ever come easy for him. And for him to turn his career on, what is he like? 30? Is he almost 30?
Yeah, 30,
Yeah.
31.
So for him to get that before the end that's good on him.
Yeah, there's the other interesting thing that I took away too was the impact of potentially with Valley Sports. Case in point, the Seattle trade, the Jared Kalanick trade, the Atlanta was one of those that completely caught everybody off guard. But I want to get your thoughts on that. I mean, Detroit, we know wise has done well with Valley Sports in terms of the ratings, what have you. But do you still see this significantly impacting any other team, perhaps even in the AL Central?
You mean the TV contracts?
Yeah, like TV contracts. Yeah, that we're going to see more. I mean, we saw the White Sox spend, but so far it's been Cleveland's not going to spend, obviously. We know that. But
Right.
so far it's been like kind of quiet with Kansas City. The White Sox have done some.
I don't think the TV contracts, because the MLB will step in. Those contracts will be done. The paycheck may come from the MLB, or it may come from however they sort that out. And this is way above my pay grade. I'm not. You want to talk this stuff? Talk to Tony Paul or somebody that knows a lot more about the inner workings. I don't know, but I know that the MLB would step in, and they're not going to have their product not be put out in front of the people. They're going to. In fact, I think the MLB would like to run it themselves anyway. So I think that's the direction it would go before. Like I can't imagine any team like. Did you hear? Was it written that they traded Kalanick because they couldn't afford him? That was a money a drop there, because I thought they just had run their course with him.
There were some reports, and I saw it. Guys were talking.
Yeah.
It sounded like it was a special scenario in Seattle because they had also like teamed up with the Seahawks and some other things, and then suddenly all that money was going away. I don't know, and I didn't dig into it too much because I don't live in Seattle. But yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, and I would be shocked if. Well, I shouldn't say I should be shocked, because that is a big piece of money. But I do think they're going to get that money, whether it's from MLB or it's from Bally's or whoever ends up buying the regional networks.
Yeah, and it's just I was just kind of curious because it seemed like some of these teams have been a lot quieter than normal. But then again, it could be all pick up once all this movement happens. And so getting back to the Tigers for a moment, one of the observations that I liked you made was Kerry Carpenter in right field, and he did a really good job in right field. There's the throw down in Minnesota where he gunned somebody down, showing his range, and in Erie he wasn't bad in outfield too. I remember when the whole hang up was, I didn't think he was a butcher in right field, comparatively speaking to somebody like, I don't know, Roberto Campos, who that's a yeah. I mean, I remember telling Tony Paul, he was like, "Oh yeah, we heard he's a butcher." We're like, "No, he's good." And then the same day, Tony Paul shows up to the game. What do you make, Chris? What do you make, 2 errors that game?
Yeah, that was a bummer.
Yeah.
That was a bummer. We were out there, and Tony Paul's like, "I heard he's a butcher." I'm like, "Oh, he's really good." And he goes out there and takes the worst route I've ever seen anybody take in an outfield. Like, he ran in front of the center fielder, and the ball flew over his head, and it was like, "What?"
It happens.
No,
those mistakes are supposed to be made at that level.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I do think there is something to once you reach the big leagues, to a certain extent, that some of the concerns are gone, like your life concerns, right? You're up there, and now you could just focus 100% on training and getting better as it being an outfielder. And I've been up to there enough times to see how hard these guys work every day, and I do think Carpenter got better in the big leagues.
He did, and again, develop the emphasis on development. Everybody talked about, of course we have coordinators and we always develop our players, but the Tigers took it to a whole nother level when this new group came in. And George Lombard is incredible with the outfielders. Then they work every day. They have so many crazy drills that they do. If you don't get better, then you're really a bad outfielder, because even marginally, I mean, Carey's not going to win a Gold Glove. He's just not. It's not. But if he hits 30 home runs and plays like defense like he did last year, who wouldn't take him? He's going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, and we've seen all across baseball that if you've got a good enough bat, they'll hide you in the outfield and be just fine. I mean, that's kind of what Philadelphia is doing with everybody.
I know. I like that. Like, I like AJ's philosophy on that. Like, I'm going to try you first. I'm going to believe that you can do it first, and then you show me you can't, and then we'll adjust. And I think he's done that when he put Andy Ibanez out in right field, and Andy wasn't even taking reps. And you got to do it. And when you have a lineup like they're going to have, where it's going to be a lot of mix and match, and he's going to try to play the games with the righty lefties and whatever matchups he sees fit, you're going to move guys around. I don't mind that. I think it's fun. I think it's fun to watch games like that. I love to watch the chess match. I'm sure you guys do too. It's fun to see, like, what's he thinking down the road? Why is he pinch hit him there instead of this other guy? And that's fun stuff to me. I think it should be to most fans.
Yeah, and especially if you look at another outfielder that comes to mind too, is Akil Baddoo, who we saw improve. Even when he got sent down to Toledo, the route he was taking on the ball was much better, and he showed an arm that wasn't there before. And I think maybe because post surgery, those kind of things. But Akil Baddoo's role, now you've seen that Canha's here. I'm wondering, where do you see his role? Is he going to continue to be kind of like a bench bat? It just seems like that side with that trade, it seems like his at bats might be limited.
No, he's gonna have all the bats he wants, because they're gonna come at AAA. I feel like he's the option. I think he's got the hardest road. He's the toughest job coming into camp, because right now he is the odd guy out. When Canada there and Riley's back, and Carpenter and Malloy, and Veerling's going to play a lot of third base, but he's still a really good outfielder. McKinstry. I mean, there's a lot of things going on there. And Baddoo, I mean, I think they still could put him in a trade package. But I think he's going to be the one that's really on the outside. And, if somebody gets hurt, he's moving ready, because he took strides last year. But right now, man, he's the odd man out, and he has options left. So he's a guy that could be toggled back and forth a little bit this year.
Yeah, I think one of the things we learned about Scott Harris last year is he likes to have more big league caliber players as depth in Toledo than Alavila did. Maybe not that he likes it more; he just did a better job of doing that. But
what you just said.
But the other, yeah. But we were also speculating that now with San Diego making that Soto trade, they lost two of their main outfielders, and they don't have any left-handed hitters on their lineup. Basically, it's basically Jake Cronenworth now. So I thought that might be an interesting landing spot for one of the Tigers' left-handed outfielders, and not necessarily Baddoo, but I mean he'd be the one that they'd probably be most willing to part with.
I promise you that Scott and Jeff Greenberg, they're exploring all those, because I know they would like to get something. They don't want to bury Akil necessarily, but they do want to see if he comes, he could win a job. I mean, he's a talented guy, he's an athletic guy. We saw what he can do when he's right. He's a menace on the bases, and he's an energy guy, spark guy. But if they can trade him and get something to improve in other areas, if they can get a starting pitcher and a deal back for Baddoo and whoever else, that's what they're looking for. That's the deals that are going to come, more so than a free agent signing, unless it's a pitcher. Free agent pitcher is a different story.
So, I mean, one of the things I wanted to get from you, as somebody who's never been to the winter meetings, and as people, we sit around and looking at Twitter waiting for things to happen. I mean, what's it like being there when you're there, and we get the idea that like, hey, absolutely nothing's happening, but I assume there's meetings going on constantly around you, and I don't know if you're hearing whispers or anything like that, or if everybody's just kind of pulling up to the bar.
Well, first of all, I couldn't even find the damn bar. The place is so big and so confusing. But there's two ways of doing it. There's the John Heymans of the world who prowl they walk around and walk around and walk around. All the GMs and the presidents and the agents, they're all meeting all the time. And there's all industry stuff too. Like the trainers are there, the clubbies are there, the clubhouse guys are there, Schmeichel's there. They have all their meetings. It's a big industry convention, so it's all industry. It's everything. And But there's the guys that walk around and try to like snag an agent from the way and try to cornhole, pigeonhole them. And I don't do that. I don't do that. I have my contacts. Most of our job is sitting around waiting, seriously, because we have our time. We have our set times with AJ and with Hinch or with Scott. And every day we have access to them, which is why we go, because we have that kind of access. We have access to on Monday and Tuesday, we have access to all the major league managers, whoever we want to talk to. If we want to do an issue story, which I did the other day, you can go to each one and ask your questions and gather your stuff. So it's valuable in that sense. There's a lot of stuff to get and squirrel away. And Leland made it really happen. We were lucky when Tram and Morris made it a few years back. That makes it a lot of fun when that's your first 2 days right there, chasing the Hall of Fame stuff. That's a lot of fun. But it's like you said, though, it is a lot of sitting in that massive workroom and just man, chilly workroom. I had to wear my jacket. We're just sitting in there waiting and waiting and waiting. It's not glamorous, man. We're not poolside.
Well, yeah, and like the two big kind of events there are the new is the draft lottery, which I don't think many people get to witness, right?
Yeah, I didn't go. I mean, why? I mean, you guys are different than me. I drafts to me are like I can't.
Yeah.
I don't love them, and I'm damn sure not gonna go to a draft lottery. I went to the first one because it was the first one.
Yeah.
Nothing to get by watching it.
Yeah, there really isn't. It's. I have a friend who always said, like, I'm not going to watch draft coverage. I'll just look and see who got drafted. I don't need to know instantly. But yeah, we like to do that stuff. But then the other one is the Rule 5 draft, which gets more coverage for something that matters. It's hard to.
I blame ESPN. Yeah. I blame MLB
No.
Network because they have to create their content and they have made the most boring thing and really inconsequential thing in the grand scheme. There's not a, even the Tigers had good luck and had made good picks in the Rule 5 draft. It's not been franchise altering by any stretch, right? Yeah. So yeah, I knew, I didn't know, but when we had breakfast with AJ that morning, he kind of hinted pretty strongly that they weren't going to be a pick. So even though I stumped from my guy from Davenport University, big 6'8" lefty, Grant Wolf. You guys have come across
Grant Wolfram. I remember, I'm nerdy enough that I used to do mock drafts I used to do like a full 40-round mock draft for the Tigers, and I used to pull guys from.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, when nobody cared, but me. It was basically an exercise for me to learn these drafts. And I had them fake draft him like 7 years ago. I want to say when he was coming out of.
Draft him. They did draft him in 15. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
he went back to he went to Central first, and then he went to Davenport. But I was plugging for him. Lefty reliever, let's go.
Yeah, but yeah, that they ended up being one of the smaller, Rule 5 draft hauls ever. I think because
10 guys. 10 guys were taken.
Yeah, and so that makes sense. That I thought maybe the Tigers would take somebody, but no. So. That's fine.
It's a good sign, though. I argue that that's a good sign because your roster is good enough now where you don't have to, you got the guys that are fighting for these jobs are better than who you would have gotten with the 11th pick.
And especially you look at the fact that here they are with, I personally think you're talking about this with Baddoo, and it's the same situation with Mason Englert. Englert's going to provide depth because both, if you look at the rotation down in Toledo, I think he's going to get some time. I think personally, because of his repertoire, might be better suited as a starter. But with like the reason why I was thinking about Baddoo when you mentioned Toledo is that the Tigers right now, outfield wise, outside of Detroit, kind of have a little bit of a drop off. And so I'm just it'd be interesting to see how they would position Baddoo. But getting back to Englert, I personally think he would be a good starter for Toledo because I think that's where he's going to start the season, at least in my opinion, because it just allows him to work out some of the mechanics or some of the issues he was having.
What Scott told us was Englert is going to be stretched out as a starter. A lot of guys are going to be stretched out as starter. They're going to stretch them all out. Brisky, they're going to stretch them out. But more than likely, most of those guys will end up in relief. Brisky's going to be a reliever. I can't see any way that if he makes the big league team, he's going to be in the bullpen. That's just because they're still going to have to worry about innings with guys. Even Reese, right? I mean, even Reese, you're going to have to worry about innings a little bit. So they're going to stretch all these guys out, which they should in spring, and have them all ready to go, and then kind of make a decision after that. But I think Englert will end up staying in the rotation because what exactly you said it right is stuff. he's got enough variance to his stuff where he can go two times through the lineup. He's got to get healthy. He's got to get the velo back though, man. That was the weirdest thing ever, that he just the power was gone. So he's kind of they were saying that he's retooled a lot of things. You know, he's retooled a lot of things in his workouts, and he's got his hip fire back or whatever the mechanics they were saying about it, and he's back. He's back to getting the velocity, which is vital.
Yeah. He had the pitch mix to be a starter. You're right, but when the velocity was dipping down to 90 miles an hour, that's not going to cut it these days.
No.
The one guy that we got news that Alex Faedo is going to get a fourth option year, which I think is pretty big, because he's a guy that they may want to stretch him out again. As you said, they're going to stretch out everybody, but it seems to me that his best path at this point is just moving permanently to the bullpen, because he's pitched fine when he started, but the kid just can't seem to stay healthy for long enough. And there's other guys. Yeah, and the depth, the depth has gotten to the point where he's gonna. I don't see him beating out Reese Olson or even Sawyer Gipser-Long at this point.
No, Fido is a very effective 2-pitch pitcher. He's got 2 pitches and he works it up and down. And I think you're right. I think that's his role, but I think it's smart of them to stretch him, because even out of the bullpen, they want him multiple. They want everybody to be multiple innings. Yeah. So he's a guy that I think plays that bridge role really well, and I don't think we ever want to see him go a third time through the order, so that's a good spot for him. And I'm confused. You guys maybe have a better feel for this than I do, but a 4th-year option is great for the team. I think it sucks for the player though, right? Because it's like, now that they know that they're going to be toggled again, I think they would rather have no option and go win a job, or else let me go and let me find someplace where I can make a big league roster. No, you agree?
I think for sure. With Fido, he happened to have the injury at the worst possible time for him and really for the Tigers, where I think he had just gotten added to the 40-man and then got hurt, and so. But yeah, I think any player probably wants to, and we saw this with Spencer Turnbull, wants to get those years out of the way as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's a whole nother saga that we do not want to talk about on this podcast.
No. That's a off the record kind
of
stuff.
You guys have to get me a beer before I tell you that stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I have exchanged notes about that before. What I heard at West Michigan. Well, again, we'll talk about that another day. But I think what Faedo is, to me, I see a team that could weaponize him. And so I think this is a good opportunity for the Tigers, because I think there's stuff there. He has good swing and miss stuff with those 2 pitches, but staying healthy is one of the biggest things. And we noticed last year he went back to that windup he had in Florida, where he was able to kind of, and maybe it caused an issue. I'm not really sure, but I think he's the kind of pitcher that elsewhere, like Tampa or somebody, like, could weaponize him based off his arsenal.
No, I think the Tigers have weaponized him too. And I think that going back to that arm slot was the Tigers' idea. That's his natural arm slot. And he ended up hurting himself when they tried to change him. So that's, you had that flip kind of, because his natural thing is where he's most comfortable. And the last injury was freaky. It wasn't an arm injury. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's that stupid finger thing that messes up when I think it's when he throws his changeup and he's trying to, he finally got to where he could actually throw his changeup, and it would cause that blister and rip the nail, and he had to do the whole thing. So that's a freaky thing. I don't even consider that like an injury that it was like the Tigers would be worried about. That you fix it. It's not like, he hurt his shoulder or his elbow like he had in the past. So, and he's a big, strong kid. He's also, pay attention to, because he's working out with Scooble in Arizona this offseason. And if you saw Scooble come back from his last workout, he's a grown man now. And Fido's 6'8" or whatever, 6'7", he comes back and built like Tarek, that we might be looking at something there. He might be throwing 100. Who knows?
That's what I remember. I only came down to the ballpark a couple times last year, but one of the times I was standing by the dugout and I see Scooble and Foley walk by. I'm like, good Lord, these are large men. But then Reese Olson walks by. I'm like, hey, all right, I can handle that.
Yeah, Reese is he's a angel-faced assassin. He looks like a baby, but he throws the heck out of it.
Yeah, it's weird seeing a guy like, he's probably 5'11", 6 feet tall, and 180 pounds or whatever, but he's throwing 97, 98. It's like, man,
Yeah,
I don't know where this
you
comes
got the
from.
fire, competitor, man. He's a competitor.
One last question for you. There's kind of is there a push? I mean, we talked about this with my to being signed that potentially it could be used as recruitment for other Japanese pitchers. But do you see that happening? I mean, in terms of like, I feel like Yamamoto is going to New York or San Francisco, but you have the lefty, and why am I drawing a blank on his name?
Imanaga.
Igamada. Thank you. I knew I was going to butcher his name. But as
I'm
far
you're
as I
saying
know,
names. I'm not saying those names.
but I know the Tigers have some interest in him as well, allegedly. But do you see this beginning? Is this going to be different from the Masao Kita days? Because I mean, you were on the Pistons beat then, but you remember when the Tigers signed him? That was a big deal.
Yeah, but this is way different because Maeda
right.
is an established pitcher. I mean,
Way
he's
different.
he's a legit pitcher, and they didn't sign him to recruit Japanese players.
Right.
It's like that. That is like if it happens, he has a good experience here, and he would love to have a Japanese teammate, sure, but that's so far. Like the way you recruit Japanese players is to win, pay them a boatload of money. And there's nothing in this Detroit area. I mean, there's a Japanese community in Michigan, Detroit area, big one. It's not like this is it would be like a total culture thing, other than wherever else they might go in the United States. So I never bought into that. I hated to even write it when it was coming up because I'm like, no, you're coming here to get this pitching staff better, to anchor this pitching staff, make 30 starts. That's what you're coming here for. You're on a 1-year deal or 2-year deal. I'm sorry, 2-year deal. So you're not. Would they like to be bigger players in the Japanese talent market? Absolutely. But they just now started to kind of make those inroads. They can't put that on Kenta. That's so unfair. Like, listen, we want you to make 30 starts and we want you to make our team better. But hey, if you could, go talk to these dudes and get them over here, we'll sign them. That's a fallacy. I don't buy that.
Yeah, I don't buy it either. And I think that even getting the vibe from the press conference too, that he really just wants to go and do the best job he can. And just, that was, by the way, that press conference was pretty sweet in the sense of just how he kept adding to the interpreter after a while. And
he wanted to show his personality. And I like that. I wish more guys, because a lot of guys like Andy and them, they'll just let Carlos, the interpreter, just say it. And you can't really get a feel for who he is. I thought Kenton tried to really show his personality. The guy's in Minnesota. He's hilarious. He's a good guy. He's a fun guy to be around. He likes to have fun. He's kind of crazy in his own way, and he wanted to show some of that. I did. I agree with you. I like that too.
Yeah. It's just because like when then the interpreter would go in and pause and start laughing, he goes, and then the answer, especially about Detroit being well known in Japan, that was interesting.
Yeah.
So Chris,
not Detroit, the logo.
The logo, the logo itself, yeah, that's right, yeah, because actually the swag too, because I almost wanted to.
Roger has left the building.
He's got a room full of interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh yeah, there you go. That thing's
this is
sweet.
When the Tigers toured Japan in 1961-62. And yeah, this is sponsored by Bell and Howard, and this is. Yeah, I think K-Line went over there, but I think Rocky, Cash. But yeah, this tiger is very similar to a tiger logo they have in Japan for one of the teams. So
that's Rocky Calavita right there on the cover.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was 61. Cool. I think 62, 63.
Yeah,
for Japan. So
Maeda was -30 at the time.
Yeah, that's a thought. But so Chris, what do you, in terms of we want to plug your stuff. So obviously where people can find you, of course, thatnews.com, but what else you got going on this off season? And also are you grateful that it's not the Pistons beat anymore, right?
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. It's so weird. That was such a big part of my life, 16 years covering that. And we had a championship run and all that. And now it just seems like a whole different league to me. Like the product on the floor is not the same. They legislated defense. It seems like completely out of the game. And I don't know the people anymore. I used to know it from the officials all the way down to the agents. And wow, it's just like that wasn't that long. Like 09 was my last year covering them, and it's just like a whole different frontier now. I barely recognize it, and I hate to see what's happening to the team, but you can't change the foundation every year. You have to at some point figure out what you're going to build around, and it seems like to me, just looking at it from the outside, that they have a different philosophy every year. Like Cade Cunningham, well, what are you going to do around him? You can't just draft Cade Cunningham and say this is our guy. You got to have a plan. Like what's this team going to look like around him? And I don't think they've ever done that, have they? As far as you can tell.
Oh,
What do I
I
know?
think that's the main thing is well, you touched on it. Like whenever the Pistons have been really good, it's been kind of built on the foundation of strong defense, and defense just really isn't allowed anymore.
Right.
You know, you got to find a way around that. But yeah, it feels like their current GM doesn't really have a great feel for building a team. He can get
No,
a
he
bunch
gets
of
players.
players
You
with raw talent, but they don't fit together at
right.
all.
Or you don't have the patience enough to let them develop their talent into players. Because you look around the league, there's a lot of Pistons picks and guys with the Pistons for a couple of years who are really good players on other teams right now, winning teams. So I don't know. That's again not my headache anymore. I got about 10 years of rebuild here behind me here. So I'm
Yeah.
trying
I would say it
try
hasn't been a picnic for the Tigers.
Man. So, all right. So you can find Chris on Twitter at, let's see here. I just had it and now I've lost it.
At C. McCosky.
Yes,
Easy
McCosky. Yep. And make sure you subscribe to Detroit News. Has some deals going on right now for subscribers, correct, Chris? For new subscribers?
Yeah, always. It's the best deal in town, especially for the holidays. Good gift idea. Put it in a stocking.
Awesome. Are you gonna be at the Killer Christmas tonight, by the way?
I don't think so. I used to go to that religiously, but it's way far out, and yeah, probably not. Probably not. I'm gonna send my support telepathically to the fellow.
That's a lot of people in one place, man. I just remember
Killer
like kind of screwed in there.
That's the other reason too. You can't even park, right? You gotta.
Yeah.
But Killer was a big part of. I mean, we were friends forever, and I was on the Lions beat when he died. So we were. That was, and in fact, I was with him the night before. We were having beers, and it was the night before, and we went to practice the next day, and he didn't show up, and then we found out. I still can't even believe it that he's not with us. Sad.
I was a big fan of his on the Fan when he did stuff with Belizean all the time, and that was one of those things growing up. When I wanted to change the pace from Dominski and Doyle, I was dating myself there. I went with those guys. But Chris, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we'll be talking soon, my friend.
I appreciate you guys. You guys do great work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you too.